the question, who is a servant leader, Greenleaf said the servant leader is one who is servant first. And in The Servant as Leader, he wrote, it begins with a natural feeling that one wants to serve first. Then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. The difference manifests itself in the care taken by the servant, first to make sure that other people's highest priority needs are being served. The best test is, do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? And what is the effect on the least privileged in society? Will they benefit or at least not be further deprived? How close does that come to your own definition of servant leadership? And are there differences between your understanding and this one when it comes to servant leadership?
Greenleaf's definition of servant leadership has given me pause many times. And I think one of the things I love about servant leadership when you contrast it with other leadership theories is that there's a complete reversal of power and there's a restoration of some type of understanding of the communal idea of humanity, that something about all of us working together in some direction. And but inside that there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of I really liked how Greenleaf reverses what we normally think about power. So the leader, the person we think of as a leader, Greenleaf is often questioning that. Maybe that person came to it with too much ambition. Maybe that person came to it because of a certain type of a need to assuage or soothe their own power drive. You know, and I know it's not always like that, but I thought that involved a lot of strength of thought on his part to think of it that way. So in looking at the idea of servant leadership and the fact that a servant leader, you know, the best test of a servant leader coming out of Greenleaf's definition is that people around the servant leader become more wise, more healthy, more autonomous, more free, better able themselves to become servant leaders. That's authentic and kind of scary and difficult to fathom, because that means if a person actually really would like to be a servant leader, it's not, the answer to whether or not they're being one is not in their hands. It's in the hands of the people that they're with. And that is very nice. I think that reverses almost all typical conceptions of leadership and puts the power or the relational dynamic or the follow-through, the effects or the impact of the follow-through in whether or not it actually happened. And other people would tell us that. So I can't bend my wife's arm behind her back and say, tell him I'm not defensive anymore. I'm either not defensive and then she can openly say he's not defensive, or I'm still need to work on myself quite a bit. And she can tell me that, right? So I love that idea. And that when we take that to the workplace or to nation states, so from the individual all the way up through the family to the organization to global, I think that's a great way of looking at it, that people around us get the opportunity to say whether or not they are becoming, in our presence, more wise, more healthy, more free, more autonomous. So how close is Greenleaf's definition to my own? You know, I'm humbled by his definition, so it sounds strange talking about, well, what differences do I have with that? I do have some thoughts on that. For example, when I went to the Philippines and looked at servant leadership in the Philippines, it was very different than looking at servant leadership in the U.S. And the U.S. has, in general, not always, but in a lot of spheres of influence, an individualized leadership ethos versus a collectivist leadership ethos. So there's a lot of emphasis on individual responsibility, a lot of emphasis on who's to blame and who needs to take responsibility and who needs to change it, a lot of emphasis on an individual aspiration that then would lead other individuals up towards a greater aspiration. And in the Philippines, I noticed there's a lot of collectivist in the aspiration. How can we collectively move together? What my role in it would be subsumed by the collective idea. And I think when we look at Greenleaf's definition, it's not as strong on that part of it. We have, for example, that others become more autonomous, but it might be nice to also have others become more collectively responsible. Would be maybe an addition.